All right, it's now.
That's out of the way.
Yeah.
I can hit the call.
I know, right. Roll call, please.
Chair Gary Delvo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matt Schuler.
Here.
Deputy is excused. Albert Kathy Yes.
Here.
Steve Rubis. Melanie Parma.
Here.
And Benita Robinson.
Okay, huge. Approval, we gotta get a form, number one thing. Approval of the agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
Steve and Matt, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried, thank you. Approval of two separate meetings, actually, minutes, set of two meetings, June 10th and June 19th. Motion to approve. Kathy, second. And Matt, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Regular order of business. Consideration with possible action on development agreements 25-07 with Grand Boulevard Apartments LLC for the development of 0 Grand Boulevard, tax parcel 23-43-1 and authority of, okay, I'm sorry. And authority for the director to approve of full bill assignments subject to legal review. Number one. And that is.
That's what you make that.
Please.
All right, so we're very happy to present this agreement for your consideration, which is hopefully several projects to be located at the JBS site. So yep, there's our property that we're looking at. So it's one of the several parcels we've got over at the JBS site. As you might recall, back in 2020, JBS, the local meat packer, donated this 26 acres of land to the city. And since then, we've drafted a plan to build new roads, utilities, and a new public park. Those public amenities are under construction now. Our goal was to create a new neighborhood, right? That would support a myriad of new housing options. We wanted to be able to serve a variety of income levels. We wanted to create affordable workforce housing for rents, also owner occupied single family homes and multi-generational townhomes. That was our grand plan. So this development agreement is really that first piece of the housing puzzle. This one is for multifamily rental housing. We have a proposal for 95 units of workforce housing, primarily aimed at residents around that 80% area median income level. The developer would be Grand Boulevard Apartments LLC, which is really a subsidiary of Gorman and Company. Gorman was one of the developers you all selected about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, to proceed with development proposals. Our assessor estimates that the value of this development would be around $11 million in assessed value after construction. The developer has requested TIF assistance and has identified a gap in their pro forma, which demonstrates we're meeting that by 4 tests that's required. To help close that gap, they've requested the property be transferred for $1. Additionally, they've requested an upfront TIF loan of $2.5 million, which would be repaid by the tax increment generated by the new developer. The developer has guaranteed a minimum property tax, so they would pay enough in taxes to fully cover that debt service.
The developer has also requested home funding, which will be the next agenda item. It's not what it's about.
We do have the developer on the line. He's not the only person, but it's headed with Gorman is on the call. If you have any questions for him or if there are any questions for staff, you can already answer.
One of the exciting things with this project was that we're starting from scratch. Nice and green. You guys spent a lot of time designing it because that was so critical. And it looks very exciting, by the way. Questions with regard to the development agreement?
2.5 up front for 11 mil worth of improvement. 23% ish. Personal grant elsewhere. In addition to that, later in the agenda.
hometowns have.
So it's really not a pay goal and we like so much, but because guaranteed, we guarantee goal, right?
Yes,
So it's like, my.
yeah,
And those 95 units, single family apartments,
no, these are all multi-family apartments.
that's what I thought. 2 bed max, or there's some 3 bedrooms.
There's some 3 bedrooms.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if I could say, I don't know if I can say anything or not, but
Let me open up real quick. Motion to open up the meeting, please.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to open up the meeting, all in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Yes, please, go ahead.
yeah, well, as you know, Gorman and Company responded to an RFP that was set forth by the city, as Matt indicated, like a year ago. We were real excited about this project. I honestly think this project is a huge pioneering trek in Wisconsin, targeting the missing middle, which is, I think Cheryl indicated this, or Matt, 80% to 120% of county median income. That these projects just don't exist in Wisconsin because the resources from WIDA or others just aren't there yet, legislatively. And what the city has done and the forethought of the city is to create a developable pad to try to reduce the costs that allow a developer to come in and you guys, I'm just telling you, you will be pleasantly surprised at the high finishes that will be on these units. They'll be very unique. We've done them before in Sun Prairie, but here in this neighborhood, this is going to be a game changer for this neighborhood in terms of the employers that are around there. There's just, the demand for housing for these type of employers is just off the charts. And this will make a dent in there, and we can actually target as a market rate, development in that 80 to 120 range. These employers, we can actually go into their conference rooms and say, we have units for your employees. Do you want to sign up? And that is just like, it doesn't happen in Wisconsin. There's just not the forethought and the resources to hit this missing middle. And hopefully this will be a prototype for many communities in Wisconsin to show them how to do it. So I really do applaud the city for its forethought in this, and we're happy to be a part of it.
Speaking of employers, I would imagine JVS, of course, with the restricting in their land, I would imagine they're quite excited about this.
I hope so. Yeah, they should be.
And Ted, what's the mix of units by bedrooms out of the 95 units?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have exactly in front of me. I think Matt may have something that may show the actual breakdown, but there is 1, 2s, and 3s, primarily focused on 2s and 3s, because that is the type of housing that is needed in that neighborhood.
well, do you happen to have
Do
that?
you have that home
I have the project budget in the form of, it's not with the unit counts on it, so I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it should be 2/3 of the units should be 2s and 3s.
Man, I'm really excited about the amenities that are around there. Where did you guys, can you talk a little bit about that, the park and all those sort of things?
Yeah, so we're putting in a Grand Boulevard, plus land Grand Boulevard apartments. So in the center of that boulevard will be the park space, and at the end of it will have a destination playground as well as an urban farm. We are partnering with local nonprofits on operate that urban farm. So it's a pretty cool space.
And then Matt or Cheryl, if you guys explain, we're doing a $2.5 million loan up front. Why are we doing that versus PAYGO? And then somewhere in the agenda item, it said, like we wouldn't be borrowing against the levy for this, or something to that effect. What does that mean, and how is that possible?
Right, so we have an existing PIP district in place. We established this last year. So we're able to bond out of that TID. But actually, in this case, we will be applying for a state trust fund loan rather than a traditional bond. So we'll be going after that loan, which will pass those dollars through to the developer.
And is that a lower interest rate? Is that why we do that or?
It can be. I think Diana's on the line. There might be more benefits than that, but that's the path we selected. Approach, the PAYGO is oftentimes a better approach for the city, but we understand that in some cases, in order to make the project move forward, we have to go with this approach.
Yeah, let me just answer that real quick. First of all, I have the unit count in front of me. It's 95 units. There is 23 one bedrooms. There are 48 two bedrooms, and there are 24 three bedrooms. Okay. Four of those, as you'll hear a little later, are four of those units will be restricted to 60% of the county median income for the home funds. And this was really, I would have to say, when you talk about the but-for clause, as a pay-as-you-go versus upfront, it boils down to one issue. And we could not, in this market rate deal, finance the $3 million. We could not finance the $3 million in our pro forma paying interest on it. It had to come in up front to help with construction costs because we could not afford, literally pay for that with our incomes and our rents. So that's why this is really kind of pioneering, I think, for Green Bay, is because that resource, will get paid back via TIF, just like the pay as you go. But it being upfront allows us to do the project because we are not paying interest on $3 million from day one, which is a big deal. That's pretty much the reason for that.
And does this project have any lead-in funding? I'll shut up then.
No, go ahead.
No, it does not. It's all Associated Bank is coming in with all the financing. So it's a true private public partnership with the city and Gorman and Associated Bank.
Okay. So we don't have to have any scoring go through WIDA or waiting for approvals and points and tax credits and, okay.
No. So we're actually, you look at the agreement, we're actually trying to get in the ground August 1. We have the permit already filed application with all our plans with the city. And Associated Bank will be ready July 31 to close.
And the guarantee is the principal and interest.
Correct.
And when we talk about 80 to 120% median income and targeting that, is that a limit? Meaning anybody over 120 cannot rent it, or how did?
No, that's a great question. Actually, I'm so glad you asked that. The only limit that we have in this project was the 60%, the 40 units at 60% because of the home funds. All of the other ones are the 91 units are market rate. Now, the market rate, now this is very interesting. The market rate for that neighborhood is 78% of the county median income. Okay, that's really what the market rate is right now of area, like area apartments that are in that neighborhood. Okay. However, what we're trying to create here is a community that brings in all kinds of income. So like the upper managers and the line workers and like the teachers in the area or whatever, anybody can rent here because it is unlimited in terms of the percentage of income that is applicable to 91 of the units. But the market rate rate in that neighborhood is about 80% of the county median income currently. And that's what we're charging. But anybody can come in and rent it. And it's not based on your income, except for the 4 units. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the beauty about this project is you're going to have upper management. You're going to have a whole mix, real diversity mix of incomes. You know, like in a tax credit deal with WIDA, you might have some 80s, you might have some markets in there, but you've got kind of that 60% and below is really your target market. And the reason that didn't really work here is because the area employers in this neighborhood were above 60% for their, employee. So 60% of the county median income, they're all 80 to 120. And we did a survey, believe me. We know exactly what was going on here. We have a rent study that we actually submitted with our home application that shows us that the employers have incomes in that area that target 80 to 120%. So that's the rents that we would like to target, and the mixed income in that range, which is what we call the missing middle, because there's no resources to attack that kind of missing middle. Those are the people who are house poor, but they target the rents at 80% and they can rent to anybody. That really brings in a great broad sense of diverse incomes to this area, which I think will be fantastic in between JBS, Salvation Army, and Walmart there.
That's what we originally, that was our objective, so it's nice to know that that's still on the table. That we have home mixed income use.
Numbers consistent with 95 units, what we were looking at way back when.
That's just one of,
This is
that
one
that's
project.
just one
Right.
project, so there's more.
We will proceed with additional single-family homes, townhomes, hopefully another multi-family as well.
So just so I can get some bearings. Where is this, the Croc Center? Okay, where?
Map for us.
Yeah.
So the map, or the parcel in red, is smack dab to the left or to the west is Caroline's, and then further beyond that is the Croc Center and Lime Kiln. And to the right or to the east will be Guns Road and then Walmart.
Okay, so Grand Avenue, which is, I assume, the more decorated on the bottom of the drawing.
Correct, on the south edge.
It's going to be backed up to what?
So, on the south side of Grand Boulevard, we have room for additional townhomes that are point of have townhomes line that southern property line.
Yep.
And then at Guns Road on the far east side of that line, we have some space where we think we can do another multifamily possibly. So we'll be aiming to do that.
So it stays somewhat centralized by your whole.
Yes, this is smack dab in the center of the whole though. And then to the north, we'll have single family homes. To the east, we'll have some single family homes.
So you'll parcel up skinny ones surrounding this thing and then fill south.
Yeah.
Flanking it. All right, I got it.
Any other questions or comments for the developer? If not, I get a motion back to regular business.
Someone,
Second.
Oh, we have, so we have, nine,
hi,
great, thank you. All right, now. I don't see any need to go to closed session, so I entertain a motion, whatever. Yeah, go ahead then.
One more question.
Yeah,
Is in the
please.
motion it states authority for the directing. We always have to check the share with her.
Yeah.
To approve a collateral assignment subject to legal review. What's that?
So that is the, right after these development agreements have been approved, I believe there's been, the bank has requested this collateral assignment. So we normally would have to bring them back to the RDA or something.
Right.
Ready?
Right.
So just like let me do that,
It's the transfer of the property.
right?
Okay.
And then also, I mean, I think Lacey with our original. We've made there have been a few changes to the development agreement. I think clarifications with regards to that probably aren't in this for the impact fees, there will be no impact fees on this project. They've been waived, and then we're just gonna make sure that there's a guarantee that it's solid in the development agreement with regards to if transferring the property in the future. that transfer of property would have to be approved by the RDA.
Good.
So it could be sold as long as we approve on the course. And that along with that, that the developer could sell this agreement as well. As long as we're willing to take on that. You want to make sure that the loan will be completely.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's gonna be a meeting that they can pay the loan off at any time.
Is there
They can
any
sell.
limit on when they can sell?
I don't think so.
We'll sign with things if you come back in.
It has to come back for a decision, right?
The development agreement.
Mhm.
That's in
You
most
guys
of the
don't
development
have concerns
agreements.
about that?
No, because of course, we just have been through this process a little bit. With different developers. We just wanna make sure we cover.
Yes. Lindsay, is there anything else you want to add in regard to the?
No, I think the one provision that needs to be added that's not already in there in some language is this ability to buy out the loan, which we, I think there's already some language in there that, gets to the point that this is possible, but we can be more specific about it. So to Cheryl's point, I think most of it has been done and there aren't any, there shouldn't be any additional substantive changes. But if there are, we can sort of take them up at council when it's approved.
And Lacey, that's just our ability to, some number of years down the road, say, hey, Chris Rhodes, looking like finances or buy it out. Meaning, is that what you're talking about with that statement?
No, the item that Cheryl brought up was that, the developer would like the option basically to buy out of the guarantee of the loan payments, which means they would pay off the loan. But that's for the developer's purposes so that the guarantee can go away.
Yeah. Good. That makes sense. You're in line. They're in motion.
I would make the motion to approve development agreement 25-07 Grand Boulevard Apartments LLC for the development of 0 Grand Boulevard and authority for the director to approve collateral assignment subject to legal.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Mauritius. Questions or comments in regard to the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried, thank you. Beautiful project. Really
Yes.
is.
And I think
Absolutely.
this is the most that we've ever, most 3-bedroom units we've ever had in the project too. But I remember coming to. We wanted to. That's.
And how you know that, Kathy, I'll never.
Yeah, boy, because I follow it. Back in here.
I see.
And I just want to know that related lots and is not.
Oh, okay, good.
So the.
Yes, we
Thanks, sir.
this is really hard to get
Welcome.
3 bedrooms. I know, and I love it.
Yeah, agenda item number 2. Agenda item number 2, consideration of possible action on approval of the $500,000 of loan funding to support affordable housing development for Grand Boulevard Apartments at the GBS development site.
So hence our gap that we talked about in the
Yep.
previous agenda item. The request is to use $500,000 home funds to support those 4 units. That would be at 60% of the need plus. I think our home max premium is about 260. That applies to a 25 unit. I think it's, it's a heavy lift on home funds. I wish I could provide less funding, but in order to meet that gap, this is the request, so. I think this will make this project.
So what doesn't get done when we approve 500,000 on a home? What are we? Because I know that's a big amount, that's a big chunk of money.
All the developer would have to cut $500,000 out of the project.
Okay, but what about on other projects? Are we,
So we have about 1.4 million in the till right now, so that would bring us down to 900,000 left in home funds. So are you asking the potential of home funds to be used on other projects?
so we have enough to use on other projects? We are not,
We have, I guess, I know we're working with developers now on another project. That would be interested in home funds. Got to 900,000.
so you're not concerned?
I'm not concerned. I think, we need to fill this gap. Because for it, so.
And when we talk about the 4 units,
Yeah.
which 4 units? Are we talking 3-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, 1 bedroom? Is it? But it
I'm not
change
sure
over
if it's
time?
That-
indicated or.
That can be, determined with the developer, whether it is 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom. I think ideally we'd like to see some of those go to 3 bedroom, just because there's a high need for
Yes.
3 bedroom apartments for families at that 60% or below area median income. But that is something that we would work out with the developer.
Because I wouldn't think it should apply at all to 1 bedrooms. It should apply to at least 2 and 3 bedrooms. To really
Make
provide it for a family.
I mean, you can make that, I mean, it's,
System, family space, sure.
Yes,
What about, what about the, program talked about, was it last month? Where NeighborWorks is involved, I think it,
community land.
it's Community Land Trust, is there some opportunity for, us to help with their gap funding here, but connect them with the Community Land Trust components to make sure all of these things are going in the right direction?
I think what would be challenging about that with this particular project, so I guess first and foremost, we are planning on putting some of the property in the JVS development site there, the housing development site into land trust, new land trust.
Sure.
What's challenging with this multifamily project is that the majority of the units are above the 80 and 120. So we don't think that would be an ideal candidate.
I mean, I understand relative to the whole development, but specifically these 4 units and 5.
I see what you're saying. So yeah, right. So it's the trick with that is that the property itself has to be in trust. So not just, I don't know if we can carve out just those 4 units within the entire development to be put into trust.
That's primarily an owner occupied tool.
It's primarily an owner occupied tool. We can be used for multifamily developments as well. Which is something that we are still exploring, so we don't know the intricacies of that yet.
But I mean, if we're putting $500,000 out to support affordable housing, it would be some kind of tool to ensure that it stays affordable housing, right?
Right.
Where.
Well, there's a period of affordability with home dollars that require it to stay as at 15 years, affordable for 15 years.
20
Or 20
years with
20
this
years,
amount
sorry.
that's
Okay.
subsidized.
That's a requirement.
But what I would like to do is, because you really raise a good point. And we should be exploring, what developments and how can we put a project like this, which this isn't a typical or standard affordable housing development. Because we're really only covering 4 units. So I think it would be worthwhile to explore to see how a CLT could apply to this, or if it could. I just can't give like a definite answer right now, just because we haven't gone down that route with this particular project. We had the intention of putting some of the lots designated for single family home ownership into
Right.
CLT. on that
I mean,
site.
if there's some criteria in the home fundings that protects it to stay in that vernacular for
Right.
some amount of time period. That satisfies.
For this, it'll be 20 years.
Yeah.
There's a period of affordability, which would apply also if they decide to, for some reason, sell down the road. That period of affordability sticks with the property. They'll still be inherited by the new.
Okay, I mean, that satisfies the leading question.
No, it's a really good question, and it's one I think that we should definitely explore.
Frank Torres here? Did you want to speak, Frank?
Yeah, you guys already passed the motion, but what's it called?
Oh, no, I thought you was 2 and 3. Agenda item 2 and 3 that you want.
But yeah, the great news is that you guys have
Okay,
answered.
hang on, let me
Okay.
open up the meeting. Motion to open the floor, please. Alderman Hinkvis?
Yes,
And Steve, all in favor, single saying aye.
I,
Go ahead. So I had agenda at 2 and 3 you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Most of you guys have already answered my concerns. I'm speaking in favor of the project. I think the location is terrific, and I think it not only will help continue to diversify that housing pie that everybody in this room is trying to do, but also sort of hangs in an open for business sign for other companies that are looking for this kind of support. Not a lot of communities. Yeah, you can bring the jobs, but you're on your own trying to draw the workforce. And I think examples like these, and that's what they are, examples are a terrific route to take. And yeah, let's just be in support of it. So thank you so much.
Very good, thank you. Motion to go back to regular business. You do that, thank you. Yeah, okay, just,
Good to know as to,
yeah,
what's close enough.
all those in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Back to regular business. A question, a question I ask every time with Cheryl and Matt. In your opinion, if we don't do this, this project's not gonna happen, obviously it's critical as part of, critical piece as part of the project.
Well, it's right.
Yeah, I heard you in the
Yeah,
past,
so-
I heard you in the past.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Thank-
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
The only thing that I would like to add to the motion is that we recommend that those 4 units are 2 3 bedrooms. At least 2 2s, 2 3s. I don't think from a single, that's not gonna help those people that need affordable housing and multiple children. So I'd want to add that.
You make it.
I'm making a motion to approve, and that those 4 sites at the 60-degree or 60% be a minimum 2 2-bedroom and 2 3-bedroom.
Second,
Motion by Alder second by Matt, questions or comments in regard to the motion? You guys think live with it? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
I
Motion carried, thank you, excellent. Number 3. Consideration of possible action on an option to execute a ground lease with General Capital Acquisitions LLC for the former Badger Sheet Metal site located at 402 and 420 South Broadway, 421 Arch Street, and 419 South Maple Street, tax parcel 3-5, 5-572, 5-574, and 2-947. And that once we go back again. Oh, yeah. Yep.
We really gotta combine these parcels, so you don't have to read some.
Yeah, I wanted to.
A lot
You
to
guys,
say.
you guys doing the heavy work, at least I can do the minutes.
All right, so as you're aware, we've been working with General Capital Group for a while now, over a year on a redevelopment plan for the Badger Sheet Metal site, which would include a new fire station, admin offices, affordable housing, the ground commercial space. We're still working, seems like almost every day with them, trying to push this forward. It's a complicated project, so we're very excited to be at this stage at this point. We got a little bit of a challenge with overlapping timelines with some of our grants. We might recall that over the last month, we approved funding to proceed with the demolition and remediation work on that site. So we received the bid, we're moving forward with that work. That building should hopefully be demolished the next time we are all together. Hopefully so, or we'll be at least in the process of being demolished, I should say. That work is partly funded by our US EPA brownfields cleanup grant. It's a requirement of the US EPA that the redevelopment authority maintain ownership of the property until that grant is fully closed out. We don't have full control over when EPA closes this grant. We can do the work, we can complete the work, we can submit the closure docs, but the EPA might take some time to close out the grants, and we can't officially sell the property to the developer until that grant is closed. They, of course, would love to start work as soon as possible on construction of that site, and so would we.
yes.
So would we would love for that.
how many is this?
Right, so we found this wonderful solution of having this temporary ground lease. And so we're not officially approving the ground lease today, we're giving an option to proceed with the ground lease. Where they could have that lease right over the land to start construction on their improvements while the RDA is still on the land. So we've got the ground lease documents attached to the reports that kind of spell out the general terms of what we propose to fish. But of course, we'd be coming back to you in the near future with the official development agreements and lease docs and everything, but this will at least allow us to get started it also allows them to proceed with their lead application. So that's kind of the short report I've got. The developer is here and is happy to answer questions, as am I, but we are recommending approval.
What's the risk on our part?
A risk on our part, well, it does provide, exclusive rights to the redevelop the property with their developer, which is our plan anyway, so provide some time. Which we wouldn't be able to stop and work with somebody else, but we are so far down the path with this developer, we have a tremendous relationship.
Who has to ensure the property construction?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was
Who
that?
insures the property against construction? When we retain ownership, are we responsible for builder's risk? Are we exposed to a new bit of liability to having construction on property that we would own that we wouldn't otherwise?
Sure. I will defer to our city attorney.
That's fine. You can also forward the question to the developers, but the answer is no. The developers are required to have builder's risk and a number of other insurance requirements provided in a certificate of insurance with us.
Okay.
Would you like to hear from the developer to help it out? We didn't get right here.
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
First game, what is the open meeting?
Someone.
Thank you, Steve. Steve. Yeah.
All right.
Please, give us your side of the story.
Good deal. I'm Sid with General Capital. So I guess a couple of things related to insurance. The concept of the ground is the triple net. It's almost like a shopping center type of thing where the developer is responsible for everything. And we just don't actually own the fee simple title. And the way that this is intended to go is once we sort everything out with Matt, and Cheryl and their team with the EPA grant, we don't want a ground lease. That's not ideal. So the second that we do sort all that out, we'd have this, I guess we'll call it strike kind of concept where then we get to buy it fee simple for $1 or something like that. And that's the idea. It's a tool to be able to apply for the tax credits because we do need site control. We can't just have a letter of intent or anything like that. We need something legitimate. And this does the trick, and the attorneys work hard to.
And they're happy.
And it keeps things, it's a big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's open. Frank, I had you down here that you wanted to speak about E3 as well. No, you don't.
I'll wait my time to support.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the developer? Matt, I entertain a motion to go back to regular business.
So moved.
Second.
Matt and Paul, please, all in favor, someone saying aye.
Aye.
To back to regular business. Questions, comments?
Yeah, do we have any sense of the timeline on once we're at their convenience of when they close out with the grant?
The timeline for the grant closure?
Well, right, so that
Or the project
the
overall?
EPA on your ground lease, right, those things are all what are tethered together. How
Right.
long are we talking?
Well, we hope to complete the demolition and the remediation here in the next month or two. So that work would be done. As part of that scope of work for the PTA grant, we also have the green infrastructure corridor along the southern property line. We still have some more work to do with that, to really design those improvements. And so that could, and that could happen further down the road. The developer can continue to improve their project, build their project while we figure out those details. And so I would love to say we are able to close this grant out before the end of the year. There's still some uncertainty there. Sure. But I would love for that to happen very.
So we have everything we need to close it. It's just whether or not federal government gets it done.
Once we spend all the money, we have to spend all the money for the grants with within the scope of the grants, those. The remediation, with the demolition, and then installation of that green infrastructure corridor. So we gotta do all that work. And we're going to be moving forward with that with. Then hopefully the building coming down in the next few weeks.
Questions, comments, motion?
I'll make a motion. Agenda item 3. Reading the whole thing.
Okay, good.
And also,
Okay, there's a motion by Steve, second by Alder Pincus. Questions or comments, any additional questions or comments regarding the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signal by saying aye.
I,
Excellent. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Number 4, consideration of possible action and approval and recommendation to the county council of the city of Green Bay 5-year 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan and 2025 annual action plan. Well,
That's me.
well, please.
Thank you, right. It has been 5 years, since we have, completed or updated our 5-year consolidated plan for the use of our home and community development block grant programs. Really the purpose of the consolidated plan is to ensure that the city is aware of what community and priority needs are, to help focus then these funds over that 5 years to address those priorities. Through our public engagements, we held a couple public hearings. We have done a community-wide survey, and then also stakeholder conversations with past recipients and community organizations. And really, what you have in front of you are the goals for the 2025-2029 consolidated plan. And I can say that the priority needs really haven't changed much from 5 years ago. We received a lot of inputs and comment from the community regarding the need to address affordable housing in all of its shapes and forms. So from affordable rents, multifamily development to opportunities for single family homeownership. There was a wide expressed need for an increase in services that address homelessness and drug addiction, mental health. There was a number of comments regarding infrastructure improvements, specifically bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. From the survey, there were a number of respondents that just indicated wanting to feel safe, being able to walk in the neighborhood and bike in the community to get around. So we are not proposing anything new or earth-shattering here with this 5-year consolidated plan. I think if anything has changed, it's just the increase in need for affordable housing, homelessness services, and in general, support to our nonprofit partners overall. So we are looking at creating physical improvements, which would be improvements to our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, streets and alleyways. We are looking at supporting neighborhood services. So this would be crime prevention programs, community youth centers or facilities, general neighborhood cleanup and curb appeal. So we use these funds for addressing properties that are either abandoned or severely neglected. Also looking at continuing to provide support in economic development. Job creation is something that is also very important to the community and the city. So we are looking at continuing our economic development revolving loan fund, which again, the major outcome for providing the economic development loans to small businesses is that job creation specifically for individuals that are low to moderate income. And then something that we continue to fund and support, and we have for the past couple of decades, is further fair housing initiatives. So looking at continuing our work with Metropolitan Milwaukee for housing and addressing fair housing concerns in the community. So then I guess before I shift gears into our 2025 annual action plan, so how we look at addressing those goals, I just wanted to pause here if there are any questions from the RDA regarding community needs and priorities.
I have one question. As it relates to short-term rentals, and we are talking about the number of short-term rentals that have grown significantly in the city of Green Bay over the last 10 years. So those homes are empty. Some of them are small, some of them are big. Is there anything that addresses that? in this, or can it be addressed?
So there isn't anything in that can be used for federal, with federal dollars, there's not a specific program that can be used to address short-term rentals. Like
I'm
these
just-
dollars can be used to help, develop, or build or rehab, so our community development block grant program. We used to do, when the housing market was different, the real estate market was different, we would partner with community organizations like NeighborWorks Green Bay, where, we would work with, acquiring, neglected, almost beyond repair properties at a very reasonable price, like almost land value. And then we work with community partners to rehab those units and then sell them or rent them to low to moderate income households. With the housing market, and you'll see, as you see later on, what our allocations are, it's just become extremely cost prohibitive to do that type of rehab work. So to just get back to your question about addressing short-term rentals, there's nothing specific in here that calls out using these funds to address the short-term rental.
Okay, no, I actually don't want to use the funds for short-term rental. What I
Okay.
was saying is.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Is looking at limiting the number of short-term rentals within the city of Green Bay based on this with federal dollars.
Right, so with
I don't even
the,
know that's even possible.
well, it is really, I guess I'm gonna, in a roundabout way. If I could just speak for a second on this. When we are using these dollars to invest in the construction of affordable housing, there are periods of affordability. And so income qualifications, rent limits. So I'm not saying we can exclusively 100% guarantee it's not going to become a short-term rental. It would just be very difficult with the regulations and requirements to use these funds for affordable housing to use those units for short-term rentals.
Okay, I'm just talking about limiting that, meaning
Sure.
we have X amount within the city. And as we do this, we wanna,
And for that, I guess I would
No,
defer
no,
to our legal department and department director on short-term rental regulation.
Deb, you're speaking the language of many people. Like to decrease the number of short-term rentals, unfortunately, we don't control that. That is controlled by the state. So we do what we can, each municipality does what they can, we have license, you have your license, you have some inspections, you have to do certain things. You put those things in place, but really, we don't have a whole lot of power to use. Seems to have, and then
it's,
so you're right, they're kind of eliminating the middle market.
yes, we're eliminating the middle market. There's people that want to buy homes in the $250,000-$300,000 range.
Right.
And, if we're putting that for short term, it's not helping those people that live in our
Right.
city. So,
It would become
but I
very
can take that
difficult.
offline.
No, it'd be very difficult, if not impossible, to use these funds
Okay,
for housing that within the short term.
I was hoping the strategy would say, no, we don't want to have any more of these. Okay, thank you.
Well, anything else you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to pause here before I shift into the next part of this conversation. If there are questions about the consolidated plan and goals or priority for needs.
So will, your staff recommendation is $940,000 for the block grant and then another, we'll say $500,000 the home applications.
Right.
What was it 5 years ago?
Yep. So I got those numbers for you. And fortunately, it was really uncertain. I mean, there's a lot of federal funded programs are in these times of what it was going to be, but our 2025 allocation for community development block grant actually increased by about $20,000. So 2024 it was $914,351. If we go all the way back to 2021, it was $969,580. At the highest point, and it kind of fluctuated. Low end in 2022 was 905,000. So it stayed relatively consistent the past 5 years. for the block grant, for the home. Those have changed a little bit as well. So again, looking at 2021. That number, that allocation was $537,547. 2025, it's dipped, it's $468,186. But again, anywhere between that, the low end, 468, to the high end in 2022, it was 577,000. And HUD has a formula that's they're not quite aware of, but they have a formula they use to determine those allocations. So then, looking at our allocation plan for 2025, we are looking to continue our investments in fair housing services. So we have a contract with Metropolitan Milwaukee for housing for $30,000, and they handle any concerns, complaints, questions from Green Bay residents regarding fair housing. And they also have the ability and the authority to conduct audits. So if there seems to be a trend in complaints with a particular property manager or company, they kind of can do like secret shoppers, similar to what you hear about with alcohol and cigarettes, to try to determine if cases actually exist of discrimination. So they can be proactive as well. We have funded for the past number of years to address food insecurity. We've partially funded the community gardens program through Brown County Extension. We fund about half their position. Because many of their community gardens exist in the city of Green Bay in low to moderate income neighborhoods and are utilized by households and families that are low to moderate income and help address food insecurity. So we're looking at continuing to fund that, partially fund that position. Public service activities. So the past couple of years now, we have been issuing an application to nonprofit organizations citywide to apply for funding. So we are looking at funding that activity as well. And then looking further down, looking at to continue our home improvement loan program, infrastructure and park improvements in the city. So that's anything from new park or playground equipment to bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Then also looking at beautification and public art programming in block grant eligible areas, our facade program for economic developments, our revolving loan fund for economic developments, and then admin costs as well. And then looking at our home allocation, we in previous year, last year, we did not fund the home improvement loan program just because they had allocations remaining from 2021, 2022, and 2023. They have since drawn down on those funds and are in need of additional funds. So we are proposing to fund that program again with a 2025 allocation. And then we are also looking at including a down payment and closing cost assistance program as well to income eligible households that are looking to get into home ownership for the first time. And then we have our standard set allocation, which we have to set aside a minimum amount for our community housing development organizations, which can be used for acquisition or rehab of housing or new construction of affordable housing. Right now in the city of Green Bay, there are only a couple organizations that are designated community housing development organizations. So there's a limited applicant pool for that program. But that's something that we have to require to fund by HUD. So again, nothing major, just really a couple tweaks and additions from previous years.
Alder Nicholson, Alder Johnson. Right? Have you looked over the allocation?
I have.
Comfortable with it?
For you guys.
I don't have a problem. Person who did it.
No. I mean, when we get into like community gardens and things that we're sharing resources with the county, I'm assuming that money's allocated based on them keeping it in budget.
Correct.
Yes,
So if that would go away in this year's budget, then that money comes
We
back.
reallocate.
right.
Reallocate.
Anything else, Bill?
No, it's kind of a lot. So I'm just kind of leaving it
It's very
open
important.
to you to answer. This is an opportunity for you just to ask any questions or clarify on different programs that we fund or we could fund. And it's kind of opening up to you.
The only one that I would ask about is the down payment and closing costs. Don't the banks fund a lot of that? Do they use a lot of that?
That's a program that's used, we RFP for it, but it's administered now through, Inverworks.
Right.
And I don't know if it's 5 or 10,000, at a crack on that down payment, but they'll burn through that cash for down payment assistance.
I believe it's 10,000 now.
10,000, I'm not aware of banks.
There are-
used to be
well-
banks doing them more often, but I'm not sure if they've got that.
Yeah, and some of those are funded through WIDA because WIDA has a program as well, and they'll have certain banks that are eligible or that are partners that administer those funds. But what we're seeing now, and in the past, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but Neighborhoods did come forward in requesting an increase in that down payment closing cost assistance just because of the changes in the housing market. 5,000 or 7,500 does not help a modest income family the way that it did even pre-pandemic, even 2012. So yeah, I mean, and to be honest with you, if we had more funds allocated to us from the federal government, that is one area in our home program, we would like to see a bump in just because it is so heavily utilized, but it's also quickly drained, it's used up quick.
Did I misunderstand that? Because did you say there was funds left from 21, 22?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was for a home improvement loan program. So that's
Okay.
our loan program, that's zero interest, deferred payment loans for income qualified homeowners to make, necessary repairs to the house, such as roofs, HVAC, windows, home repairs that they couldn't otherwise get financed through a bank.
And Lil, you mentioned that these allocations are very similar to previous years. And obviously, previous years' numbers have been right on or very close, right? I mean, history's on our side as far as what the allocations are.
Yeah, well, and this is our allocation for 2025.
Right.
And so I think what's challenging and it's something that I've expressed in the plan, because in the plan it asks about, gaps. And one of it is we've seen the need rise in our community for housing, for services, the cost of living. But what has not really increased substantially, as you can see from the past 5 years, are federal allocations to these projects.
Right.
So it's challenging.
Any questions or comments regarding for Will? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, Steve? Steve, don't move. Second by Matt.
No, not it.
Any questions or comments regarding the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Very good job. Thank you, Will.
Thanks.
I had no questions in the financial report. I had a couple, but we answered them. And Brown County update, Rebecca, please.
Yes, thank you. So I am here to provide our quarterly update on our brownfield activity, and that's in particular in regards to our EPA grants. We have 3 grants that we have been awarded and have been working with, that being our assessment grant, our cleanup grant for the Badger Sheet Metal site, and then our brownfield revolving loan program. So what I'm planning to do is just give you a high level review via some slides, but I wanted to point out that also in your packets, you have a much more detailed list of the projects, what work has been either in progress or completed, and then the total funds that we've expended for each one. So just be aware that you have that as well if you have any questions on that. But as far as the slides go, first I wanted to touch upon our EPA assessment grant. So that is a community-wide assessment grant. I included here Stephanie has the map up on the screen. We have 13 projects that have either been completed or are underway. So you'll see they primarily are along the Fox and the East River, which with a few outliers being on Belt, Webster, and then over 1400 Main. So with these grant funds, we are able to do assessments of potentially contaminated properties to determine if there are recognized environmental conditions there that need to be addressed. And that includes phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments, investigations, which are more in-depth sampling and investigation into site conditions, remedial action plans, and then asbestos and lead-based paint inspections. So that is a $500,000 grant. We have to date spent $344,000 of that, which represents 69% of our budget. Since I created these slides, I have gotten another invoice, so we're a little bit higher than that at this point in time. But what that means is we're starting to recognize that our funds are running low. Especially with the 13 projects that we have in various states of assessment. So looking ahead and budgeting out, what it takes for us to be able to complete those projects. Essentially, we have expended our funds moving forward. So as a new grant round gets announced, we would anticipate either later this summer or early fall, then we'll have to apply for another grant so we can continue the assessment work.
So what are the chances of getting that accepted, the grant request?
I would say it's, thanks to Matt's work in the past, we've had a very successful run at achieving those grants. So I would anticipate that we would continue to do so. And then moving on to our cleanup grant, we spoke about that a little bit earlier with one of our prior agenda items. That is $1 million grant. To this point, we have expended 16,000. Of course, as we just mentioned, demolition, excavation, and remedial activities are anticipated to start here at the end of the month. So along with that, we anticipate seeing those funds being expended very quickly. And then looking to close out that grant, as we mentioned. One of the requirements right now of the EPA is that we do conduct a public comment period for the analysis of brownfield cleanup alternatives. So we do have that available both on our website and here in the office for the community to review the plans for remediation. Once that period is complete, pending any feedback from the community, then we'll be able to move forward at that point with notifying the EPA of our final plan and then starting that work. So that's kind of driving the timeline as far as when we would anticipate that work starting after that comment period is over. And then the Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund, that one is it's an $800,000 grant award to give loans and grants to developers to remediate and clean up their land for redevelopment. This project period is ending very soon, so the end of September. So we are looking at a sunset. We haven't had any loans to date. However, we are anticipating, again, with the Badger Sheet Metal project, that these funds will go toward developers' portion of the cleanup. So we've been working with them on an application and with our brownfield consultant on determining the site is eligible for program funding. As far as what we've expended for the revolving loan fund, the city does have a cost share of $160,000, of which we've expended 11% of that. And that's primarily on staff hours and contractual services, again, with our environmental consultant. And then roughly 3,500 on budget for travel, which is essentially the Brownfield conference that was attended, I believe, 2 years ago. And just as a side note, there is the 2025 National Brownfield Conference coming up here the first week of August. So staff will be attending that in Chicago as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be a great learning experience. And then just one other thing I wanted to share, because this is kind of a fun project, but also I think highlights a lot of the brownfield work that we've been doing over the last several years. Back in 2020, the EPA had provided building blocks for sustainable communities, technical assistance to the city. And at that point, representatives from the EPA came here to Green Bay, did a number of public outreach sessions specific to shipyard redevelopment area, South Broadway corridor, visioning with the neighbors, with the business community, with various stakeholders, what is our long-term strategic vision for that area. Now they have come back just recently wanting to put together a video to highlight our success thus far. And that video included a number of interviews with key stakeholders, most of whom had participated back in 2020 with those outreach sessions. Many thanks to Alder Johnson, and also Renita Robinson was part of that as well. We also had NeighborWorks and some other folks who were so gracious as to help to share that story. So we look forward to when that video gets completed and sharing it with you all.
That's awesome.
Real compliment.
Yeah, that is.
And with that, are there any questions?
No, keep up great work.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And I love the updates.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Direction report. We got one good seat.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions? I was very excited as I drove downtown.
Oh, yes.
Crane in front of the shower and treatment. And then there was another crane a block away. It's always good to see.
It's true that Matt was running.
Yes.
One issue.
I feel like I saw Matt running crane. Might have been somebody else.
Sure, I did that very purpose.
Yeah, I believe that.
We're tracking concerns about our risk at that point.
I would do
It's all this stuff.
That high end value is really good. It's a project. Wow. Just going up nice.
It is.
Beautiful.
You guys must love watching.
Eh.
I mean, every
That's
day.
office.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Oh, yeah?
Great view. We're at the 6th story I saw today. We were at 5 yesterday, we're at 6 stories today. So
Oh, yeah.
they're cranking.
Are you directing the cranes from your office? No, yeah, right.
It's not flying. It's not.
I was actually on the rooftop of the ramp yesterday,
Oh.
and it appears that the top of the Nova Green Bay is identical height to the top of the cherry ramp, with 2 additional floors to go. So it's great to see. It's got some additional growth, but the progress is coming along outstanding.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Any questions for Cheryl or staff? If not, Jeff, any update?
Nothing additional to report.
Okay. Leah, I noticed you were on, you still there? Yeah,
Hi, yep, I'm here.
any thoughts you'd like to share with us?
No, just summer markets. We're seeing lots of great produce right now, so stop by Market on Military on Thursdays.
Okay. Is Brooke on there? Brian, you want to add anything on Brooke? Not really, okay, thank you. All right, our next meeting is August 12th. Any
I
questions?
will not volunteer, but I'm leaving very soon. So should I ask? Yeah, we're going to.
Oh, got the great trip.
Somebody take my place? No.
No longer before, I'm up there. Any questions or comments for staff? I don't think only the mayor's report, is it? No.
No, mayor's on.
Oh, yeah, okay. I guess get vacation like everybody
That is
else.
Microsoft, doesn't.
Oh,
So.
With that, mine, a motion for adjourn, please. Even that, let's see everything, you think I,
I.
you're adjourned.